I believe that Dricus Du Plessis is going to beat Sean Strickland in the rematch at UFC 312. Now, in this video, I want to break down the main event between DDP and Strickland. I want to reflect on fight number one, what we saw in that matchup, because this was a very close fight between the two the first time around. I want to discuss what I'm expecting to be different this time around because we have a rematch. We have two very good camps. We got DDP's camp, with Coach Mornay Fisser at the helm. We have Eric Nixick on the side of Sean Strickland. Both coaching staffs are going to make some adjustments. I'm going to tell you what I think they're going to be and how they're going to try to counteract each other in this matchup. And then ultimately why I believe DDP will win this fight. So first, fight number one was very close, right? When you go back and you look at the stats, you look at the striking totals, you look at the numbers, I understand why people out there would say Sean Strickland won this fight. Because when you look at numbers, when you look at the data, it's telling you Sean Strickland outlanded, right? He outlanded DDP. He outlanded him in terms of the significant strikes. And whenever you see the stat lines there, you're going to say, well, Sean Strickland won the fight. But whenever you turn the tape on and you actually watch the bout, it goes back to one of the biggest critiques I've had for Sean Strickland for quite some time, other than the fact that he just jabs and teeps, which he's very effective with that, by the way. It's when he faces guys like a DDP, when he faces guys like a Jared Cannonier, right? And I know that was also a very close fight that Strickland had with Cannonier, a few years back. But it brings me to the point of Sean doesn't fight the same way when he fights these powerhouse guys at 185. And that's, to me, what this fight comes down to, right? And that's kind of what we saw in the first matchup between DDP and Sean Strickland, right? Early on in the fight, Sean Strickland was doing an excellent job throwing the front kicks up the middle, jabbing and teeping, man. He was out there landing that jab at will. And when we make fun of Sean Strickland for this, it's deserved, right? Because he goes out there, he says we're going to go to war, and he basically just goes out there. He stays very defensively responsible. He's got one of the best jabs in the sport, and he has a nasty front kick that he utilizes off of his front and rear leg that is punishing to the body, takes wind out of the sail, and adds up as the fight progresses, right? It takes a hit on the cardio, and getting front kick to the midsection, if you've ever been hit by a front kick, it sucks, man. It absolutely sucks. So to have a guy that throws it like Sean Strickland does over and over and over again, it definitely affects a fighter, especially when it comes to the gas tank and, just your midsection moving forward. And we saw Sean do a very good job of this early in the fight. He started out very, really, really sharp. He was, jabbing. He was throwing those front kicks, and he was landing them at will. But then after the first round, we saw Dricus Du Plessis go to the stool, and it's like they came out and said, no more of that. We can't just sit on the back foot. We can't let Sean Strickland move forward, and we cannot let him dictate the pace. And what we have seen from Sean Strickland throughout his career, especially since he's been at 185, if you allow Sean to walk you down, move forward, and allow him to control the pace of the fight, you're not going to win, right? Or it's going to be a razor close fight. And even the first time around, DDP was the one that was advancing most of the time, and you saw how close it was because Sean Strickland, he really did fight a very good fight, and a lot of that had to do with his defense. But that brings me to the fact of Sean doesn't fight the same way, man, and that is why I can't pick him in this fight. While he has a good jab, while he has these good front kicks, and he checks kicks better than just about anybody in the sport. He does an outstanding job with that. He basically stands in a Muay Thai stance and then has his arms basically and relies on a Philly shell that you would see in boxing. That is exactly his method to the madness. Be able to defend the shots upstairs and then be able to check the leg kicks, having that square stance to where he's straight up in the air. He can lift both legs and check off of the lead and rear leg, which is incredibly impressive stuff that Sean Strickland does. But he basically fought the perfect fight the first time around. And I know that there was the cut, and that's kind of the story that he keeps bringing up and kind of I don't want to say the excuse because having a cut like that, it's uncomfortable and it's obviously going to affect things. But that's what he keeps pointing to as the main factor for, fight number one is, look, I had a cut, I couldn't really see. And of course, those things are factors. But I think that when we discuss fight number one, it's important to point out that Sean really looked good in the fight. He came in great physical condition, and everything that he did was very, very effective. It's just what DDP does that Strickland struggles with, because what we've seen from Dricus Du Plessis, especially in the first fight with Sean Strickland, he does not allow Sean to do what Sean does. He doesn't allow Sean to walk him down, back him up, control the pace, and fight in that phone booth boxing style of range at the entirety of the fight. That's exactly what Sean Strickland did to Israel Adesanya, right? He's like, Izzy's a good kickboxer. I can't let him sit on the outside and just pick and poke at me and set me up and play that kind of game. I got to crush the space. I got to get moving forward downhill, and I need to take it to him. And that's exactly what we saw him do to Paulo Costa, right? When Strickland is having guys on his bike, he's controlling the fight, he's coasting, and he's in complete control, and that is when he feels comfortable, and then he can just sting you with a jab, occasionally throw a right hand, throw the front kicks. That is when Sean Strickland is at his best. DDP's not going to allow that. He's not going to allow that. And I think this time around, what we're going to see is we're going to see a more aggressive Dricus Du Plessis from the opening bell. Because I think when you watch fight number one, it's important to note that Sean Strickland, like I said, he had a good first round, right? He was throwing those front kicks up the middle. He was getting the jab going. So I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to be mixing up the stances. And issue number one, problem number one for DDP to solve is the Sean Strickland jab equation, right? It's like getting asked a question, it's like a math equation. You got to sit there and go x squared plus b squared equals what? And you have to figure out how to solve that riddle to beat Strickland. So I think solving the jab is literally the entire game plan for DDP coming into this fight, because if he can shut down the jab, he easily beats Sean Strickland, right? And I don't think it's going to be easy. I'm just saying that is Sean Strickland's best weapon. He throws that thing with almost no telegraph. He flicks it out from multiple angles, and that's just the way he gets after guys, right? And eventually he'll start to double it up. He'll start to fire that right hand down the middle. So I think if DDP comes into this, solves the jab, which I think is going to be his focus number one, but then also to attack the body of Sean Strickland. Because I think in fight number one, DDP was headhunting a lot, right? And I know when you look at the stat line, he did a really, really good job of mixing things up. And that's one of the things that factors into Sean losing these close fights, man. Sean goes out there, he headhunts, he throws the front kicks to the body, but everything else is basically upstairs, right? He's not digging to the body, he's not throwing leg kicks, he's not mixing in the takedowns. And when you watch DDP, that's exactly what Dricus does, right? He throws the big power shots on the feet. He's switching stances. He's going to the body. He's throwing kicks, knees, elbows, takedowns. And that is exactly what DDP is going to do in this fight. He's going to mix it up. Just when Strickland thinks that it's going to be that it's just going to be striking, DDP will level change and shoot that blast double that he does an outstanding job of. He's powerful. He drives through incredibly well, and he will put Sean Strickland down. The problem is holding Sean down. We just haven't seen it, right? Especially at 185 pounds, Sean Strickland has very, very good grappling. While he stands straight up in the air, which allows guys to get in on his hips and take him down, he does a very good job of immediately getting back to the feet, right? Even though DDP was able to take him down in the first fight, he wasn't able to really hold him down and control him. So I think that that's something to point out coming into this, because a lot of people seem to think that DDP is just going to shoot more takedowns, take Sean down, control him for a lot of the fight, and ultimately find a submission. Of course that's possible, but I don't think that that's very likely, considering how good Sean Strickland is at getting back to his feet. So the adjustments that I'm expecting, DDP to solve the jab. If he can figure out the jab of Sean Strickland and not allow him to create that avalanche effect of just picking you apart with that thing, frustrating you, battering your face, affecting the breathing, swelling your lips, swelling your nose, and doing all those kinds of things, I believe that DDP will win this fight much easier. But if he does not address the jab, he's going to have a hard time, just like he did in the first fight. Because when it comes to mixing things together, that's on Dricus' side. I think DDP is going to stand his ground. I think he's going to be more aggressive from the opening bell. And I think that he's going to try to bring this into that phone booth type of range. Because where Sean is at his best is not all the way out, not all the way in, but kind of right in the middle. Right where he can kind of catch a kick and stuff it, where he can check it, but also be in range to step in and hit you with a good shot, with the jab, with a good straight right hand. That is when Sean is at his best, just on the edge of range where he can bury those teeps into the midsection. So I think DDP is going to come in more aggressive. He's going to look to mix everything together, constantly keep Sean guessing while attacking the body more. Because if he can take the wind out of the sails, Strickland, start to get those hands dropping, that will open up the big shot upstairs. And then just when Strickland thinks it's going to be only striking, DDP can mix in a level change, take him down, keep Sean guessing, tire him out a little bit more. Because while Sean does have a good gas tank, if you mix in the wrestling, we saw him take some deep breaths in that first fight and try to look to kind of regain a little bit of his win. But I think in terms of Strickland, he needs to get going with the teeps more. And I know that sounds kind of funny because it's like we make fun of him for jabbing and teeping, but he had a lot of success early on in the fight. And then he tried to get back to it a little bit midway through, and then he completely got away with it as the fight, or got away from it as the fight played out. So I think if you're Sean Strickland, you got to get the jab going. That's number one. Number two, you have to get those punishing teeps to the midsection. One, that'll stop the forward pressure of Dricus Du Plessis. It'll help take some of the wind out of the sail, help soften the midsection, and allow Sean to try to dictate the pace in this fight. Because if he allows DDP to just constantly move forward and Strickland is not able to get going in a forward direction, for a majority of the fight, I don't see how Sean wins this time around. And one of the other things that I do want to point out about Sean is this guy, while he does have very good boxing, he has outstanding defense. He catches shots on his arms, he rolls, catches them on his shoulder, he checks kicks very well. Even if you throw a kick, he'll catch him and aid it into a takedown or trip you off balance. Like, he has very, very good defense. But when it comes to the offense, he has a perfect jab. It's perfect technique. And then every now and then, you will see a perfect straight right hand like we saw against Israel Adesanya that can absolutely land and hurt somebody. But for whatever reason, Sean gets away from that a lot. And he tends to go to what I call ooga booga mode, and he kind of just dips his head and throws these big loopy windmill punches that are basically just arm shots, right? They don't have a ton of sting on them, and I just wonder why he tends to do that, right? And I know, he's the fighter in there, but when he does that, there's not a lot of sting on those shots, where when Strickland is fighting very technical and he's throwing those good straight shots down the middle, he can pick a guy apart, and he called himself the scalpel, DDP the wrecking ball. I absolutely think that that's how this fight is a good description of it, right? DDP's the guy, he's the whirlwind, he's the tornado, he's going to be throwing a lot of different things at you, throws caution to the wind, he's a big, powerful guy. I think as long as DDP goes in there aggressive, does similar what he did in fight number one, mixes everything together, keeps the volume up, attacks the body, brings the hands down of Sean Strickland, and then looks to come upstairs and land some big shots, I think DDP absolutely wins this fight. And I think on the side of Strickland, he outlanded him the first time around, right? He had that jab going, he had those front kicks going, and he was landing some good shots to where if Strickland's more aggressive, can find a way to be on the front foot a lot more than what DDP is going to try to do, Strickland absolutely gives himself a chance to win this fight. He has good takedown defense. He's hard to hold down. And I want to point out as well, in fight number one, one of the big factors that I think is going to be in the back of Sean Strickland's mind is, look, if I come in there and I try to be too much of a sharpshooter, I'm not doing enough to the eye of the judges, right? And that's one of the things Sean discussed in an interview with Brett Okamoto that I broke down here on my channel that I'll link below, to where he's like, look, these guys, they're coming out there, DDP's throwing punches, he's, shooting takedowns, he's mixing everything up. And I've said time and time again, that's one of my critiques with Strickland, is this is a mixed martial arts fight. If he was just in boxing, Strickland would probably have won, right? And if it was kickboxing, but when the arts are being mixed and DDP is switching stances, throwing shots upstairs to the body, kicks, and he's doing all sorts of different things, that's something that I think the judges tend to favor, which is something that definitely hurt him the first time around. But at the end of the day, I think that Dricus Du Plessis, he's in his prime right now, man. He's in his prime. He's coming off of a massive win over Israel Adesanya, going out there, getting a submission. He beat Strickland the first time around. He just seems like a whirlwind right now. The game planning of his team, they've done it all right. I believe that he gets it done at UFC 312 over Sean Strickland, but I'm expecting a good competitive back and forth matchup. I think DDP gets it done by decision. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment your thoughts down below on who you think is going to win the matchup between DDP and Strickland. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.